Hello, hello, and welcome to the Unplug Podcast. Today we're going to be interviewing Megan Monahan. Megan is someone that I've been working with since I opened up Unplug Meditation, and she's a go-to for so many who want to learn how to meditate the easy way. But what's so interesting about Megan is before she actually became a meditation instructor, she was working in Los Angeles in the music industry, and stress rocked her world so intensely that she ended up giving up her dream job to then discover her dream job. So welcome to the Unplugged Podcast. Hi, Megan.
Thanks. Hi. I'm so happy to do this.
I am too. This podcast is really about people getting to know you and your story. You know, it's so interesting because I'm constantly talking about you. You have no idea. I talk about my friend who lost an organ. Stress led her to lose an organ, and that led her to meditation. And I say to people, we don't want you to get to that place. So you are helping people change their lives so they never have to deal with what you had to deal with. So can you tell us your story? Let's start from where you grew up, what schools you went to, and then how you landed up at the door at Unplugged Meditation.
I'm so happy to share. Not everybody has to lose a gallbladder. You can all keep your gallbladder privileges. I've already done the work so that we all can live with all of our internal organs. I was born in Manhattan, New York. I was born a month early, so there was a little bit of a rough patch for me when I was a baby and having to like finish cooking and there was some definite turbulence in my life from day one. But I grew up on the East Coast, so first year of my life was spent in New Jersey. My mom's job moved us to Long Beach, California for several years from like 1 to 5, and then I was back in North Jersey. So that sort of metropolitan New York energy was in my constant. My dad's from the Bronx, so there was time spent there. So that is painfully obvious, I think, whenever you listen to me talk about meditation. But yeah, Northeast Jersey, New York girl. I went to, regular good old public elementary schools and middle schools. I went to high school in Chatham, New Jersey, which was this very like idyllic town right outside of New York. I went to college in Boston where I studied music and business. So
what school in Boston did you go to?
I went to Northeastern University.
And what did your parents do? What did your mom do that had her come to California? What did your dad do?
Yeah. So my dad, well, I was a very, I think my family was a little bit innovative and revolutionary because at the time I was born in the 80s, 84, don't do the math. And at that point, it was really traditional for, the man to be the breadwinner, for the mom, for the woman to like stay home and rear the children. And that was really opposite for me. So my mom worked for McKinsey her whole life, from when she was like 18 years old until she retired early in her 50s. So she was very much the breadwinner. My dad quit his job when I was born and stayed home with me for the first 5 years. So he was my primary caregiver. He was Mr. Mom, running around with the burp cloth on his shoulder and really, playing that role, which I'm so grateful for. I got to know him and we had an intimacy and a closeness that was so special that I wouldn't, trade for anything. He ended up going back to work and doing a variety of things, but never had, a career, quote unquote. That was always my mom's lane and what she felt really passionate and purposeful with. So that was really unique. I'm an only child, so it was a really interesting kind of nuclear family to grow up in that way. I ended up going to college in Boston. Interestingly, I always thought, and this is such a great example of the universe, showing up in divine organization for me. I looked at all of my colleges based on my desire to be an athletic trainer. I was going to be an athletic trainer. I was going to, work for the Yankees and run out onto the field whenever any of them got injured. And I looked at colleges based on that major. I was so clear about it and like so focused and so sure that that was what I wanted to do. And I looked at all these schools in North Carolina and I almost went to Elon, which is this really little school that has this great sports medicine program. And my mom said, why don't you look at one school, not in North Carolina, one school in a more urban environment in a totally different part of the country. And I ended up going to Boston to look at Northeastern, and I just fell in love with being in the middle of a city, and I loved everything about it. So I ended up going there. And after one semester was like, oh, I don't want to be an athletic training major. Like, I don't really like science, it turns out. And I don't really care what the ridge of that bone is called. And so I ended up switching. Thankfully, I went to a college, again, like divine intervention. I went to a college that had a lot of great other programs, and totally switched to business and music. And here we are. And I'm so, I never talk about this, but I'm so grateful for that college, because it really allowed me to practice what I was learning. It's a cooperative college, so it's traditionally a 5-year school. I did it a little bit less because I didn't do the last one, but you go to school for 6 months and you go get a job for 6 months. So you are constantly doing something. It's not like, oh, I have summers off, and you're either working or you're studying. And it was such a good like wake up call to me for what it means to be like in the world as an adult and as like a contributing member of society. And I loved it. And that's what led me to working in music. And here we are.
Tell me a little bit about working in music. So, okay, you left college. I want to hear the whole story, Megan.
Oh
Let's
man,
not
the whole
stop.
story. So I did two what they call co-ops. So 2 6-month go and practice what you've been learning. So the first one I did, I was 19. The second one, I was like 20, 21. And for both of them, I came to LA. So usually everyone in my major and all my friends, they all got jobs in Boston. Sometimes people would go to New York, but most people went to different jobs and businesses and whatever in Boston because the school had relationships. Whatever was driving me to do this was like, I really want to go to Los Angeles. So I'm going to find my own 6 months in music. It was a paid internship, quote unquote. Like nobody got paid. So like all my friends that were like finance majors were going and making like $30 an hour during their co-ops. And I was like paying a record label to let me work there basically. So I really paid my dues in a lot of ways. But I found 2 co-ops in Los Angeles. So I came out to LA by myself for the first time when I was 19 and was here for 6 months. I didn't know anybody. I had this internship with this producer who used to be really big in the 80s. Like he produced and wrote a big Madonna song that he was still kind of like riding the coattails of. Not painfully
Which
relevant.
one was that? Which Madonna song?
Open Your Heart.
Open your heart. I
Yep.
love that song. Okay.
So I worked for him, and then I went back to school, and then I ended up through someone I had met in this first one, I ended up getting an internship at Interscope. So that was like, I went from like 0 to 60 and was working at the Universal building in Santa Monica, and was working for a really like big guy at Interscope. So that was incredible. And that's really where I learned how to feel, I think, confident in who I am. And I really learned a sense of like worth and value intrinsically within me. I was, dealing with like the biggest people in the music industry, and I was barely 21 and running this person's office. And it was amazing and incredible. And I almost didn't go back to school. I almost, his assistant at the time was really on the verge of getting promoted. So all of the stuff that I was doing when I worked for him was really like his assistant stuff. And I was really close to leaving college and just continuing to work for him as his assistant, and maybe finishing my degree at like USC or something. I looked into that a little bit. And I think about that as one of the big kind of crossroads in my life, because he was great, the job was great, and I could easily see a version of my life where I was still working for him now, or did something else within his organization now, in a really big way. And he was really adamant that I go back to school. He was really adamant that I get my degree and that I graduate. And so I ended up not pursuing that. And I have a few of those in the music industry moments where if I had stayed working for this person, I think I'd still be in the industry. And I think about that sometimes, and I wonder if I would still have found meditation, if that would still be in my life, just in a personal way, if I would still be doing this as a, job, quote unquote. I think about that. I think it's interesting when you do that. But I do have several people that, were in my life in music that are now in my life in a very big way in a spiritual sense. So I think it all kind of ties in. But yeah, it's not that sexy. I graduated, I came back, I got a couple of jobs, one of which was like super toxic and working for someone that was just a disaster to work for. The second one was much better. I worked for one of the big agencies for a few years. And again, when I left, my boss, who was an agent, was like, I'm going to promote you. Like, I'll make you an agent. Like, I'll teach you everything. I'll teach you my business. Like, don't leave, and I was like, I think I gotta go because I don't want to do this. I want to talk about meditation. I don't want to talk about Beyonce's ticket counts in Brussels, as amazing as that is. So yeah, it's been through the grace that I have found through pain, through trauma, through, physical breakdowns in my body that I am here doing this. It's not because I woke up and was like, what I really should be doing to serve the world, or, it's just because I hit enough of a bottom that I had to find an extreme path to healing. And that extreme path to healing ended up becoming, this is what I want to do, because I'm so inspired by what I've just experienced and the transformation that I have just witnessed myself go through, that how could I not want to share that with other people? I think if I had found any of these practices that I teach in a more palatable way, if it had been like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit of stress, let me find meditation, I don't know if I would be where I am,
So can you go back to when?
I was born in July on a balmy day.
No. Like physically,
yeah,
you had to go to the hospital. And that was the turning point. So can we just talk about that? You physically went to the hospital, you physically had a surgery, and they said it was caused by stress, if I'm correct. And then you had to figure out a way to heal yourself. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
You would think that wasn't actually enough of a bottom for me, because I'm a really overachiever when it comes to like following the path I'm on. I had my gallbladder taken out when I was like 22. And it was from stress.
Right.
So like not a good look at 22 to be like losing your shit so much that you have to get non-vital organs removed. It was really after that I started seeing a therapist to start to talk about the stress in my life, and full disclosure, because we're being, vulnerable here. My job was stressful. Absolutely. Working 12 hours a day for like not a whole lot of money, all of those things were very stressful. The responsibility, the weight of that. But my other lane of stress was very much so my dad, who at the time was, I don't want to say at that point dying from his alcoholism, but not in good health as a result of his alcoholism. And at that time, we received a diagnosis for him that ended up, or a prognosis, I should say, that ended up not being true, but that was enough of a like, oh, wow, I don't feel good. Like, I don't feel safe right now in this space that I'm sitting in, where you're like maybe going to die in a year from your alcoholism. And that was really the wake up call. And that was what started to shed a light on all of the stuff that I hadn't dealt with my whole life, all of the emotional toxicity and the conversations that were never had, or the feelings that were never acknowledged or processed or metabolized. So much of my life was spent with me, saying, I'm fine, I'm fine. Like, how are you doing? It was a lot of that, and a lot of just ignoring things that I didn't have the capacity to deal with or digest in my life, emotionally especially. And so I very much believe that a lot of the health issues that I have are a direct result of like undigested emotion. So in combination with leading a very stressful professional life, also having this whole personal side of my existence that seemed to be falling apart, is what really like struck me. And it was at that point that I started having really pretty intense autoimmune symptoms. So I had hives chronically for like a year, and I had a lot of things that doctors were starting to say, let's put you on Xanax so that your body isn't feeling, a lot of things that just started to feel overwhelming and out of control within my body. And that's when my therapist said, I was 23, 24 at the time. That's when my therapist said, you need to bring in something else to help you manage all of the things that are happening. And that's when I found meditation.
And where did you find it? So how
On
did
Google.
you found the Chopra Center on
Literally.
Google?
Yeah, I went, I mean, it's so clear in my mind. I went to therapy. My therapist said, like, you need to let's try meditation for you. And nothing existed at that point. I mean, that was almost 13 years ago. Meditation didn't exist.
What year was that?
I don't know what year it was, but it was
Okay.
it was just my 12th anniversary of meditating this last November. So
Okay.
so 12 years ago, whatever that was. I'm not great at math. And I went home from that therapy session, and I literally sat down and put into Google wellness Southern California. I didn't even know to look up meditation, or that's how distant it was from like a palpable tool in our collective like culture. And Deepak Chopra's Wellness Center is the first thing that popped up. And I called my mom and I said, do you know who Deepak Chopra is? Like, do you think this is like a legitimate thing? Because I had no idea who Deepak Chopra was. And she, she laughed and she was like, yeah, I know who Deepak Chopra is. Like, he's, kind of like a legit, like big deal in this world. And I ended up going to the Wellness Center, which was in San Diego at the time. And I took a 1-hour free intro to meditation class that they had every like Friday, I think.
Right.
And I had a mind body medical consultation. So it was like a consultation with a doctor, with an MD, but who also brought in Ayurveda and just this philosophy of looking at your total well-being, not just the one symptom that you're having. And that sounded really appealing to me. Because I didn't want to just treat the hives or just the anxiety. And I didn't really want to be on Xanax. And I didn't really think I needed to be taking pharmaceuticals for all these individual things. And so I went down there. The doctor consultation totally resonated. And I was like, this makes so much sense. And it was a little kooky, I remember Dr. Valencia Porter, she's amazing. She said, I want you to look at your body, and wherever you have hives, I want you to just take some coconut oil and just rub your hives with it and just say to your hives, thank you for letting me know that something is wrong. We're working on it. Like, I've got this. Thank you for letting me. And I just was like, you sound a little bit kooky, but maybe this is going to work. And for some reason, I believe you and you don't seem crazy. So I'm like talking to my hives. I'm doing all of that. I go to the 1-hour free meditation class, and the guy who's teaching it was just so hot. And I thought to myself, maybe I'll get like a boyfriend out of this whole like healing journey meditation thing. And so after that, I spent the day down there, and I just, jokes aside, I did have this deep kind of inner sensation of just like, I can heal here. Like, this is going to work. And this is what my body needs, my mind needs, my heart needs. And so I ended up signing up for a week-long, really intense Ayurvedic cleanse called Panchakarma. I spent money that I definitely didn't have, and like figured out some things so that I could go down there for a week. And after that, it was just kind of game over. I felt so connected to what I was learning about, and I had this feeling of remembering all of this stuff, even though I hadn't ever heard it in this life. I remember I'd call my mom, or I would talk to her at the end of the week, and I would be talking to her about these really deep, meditation concepts, or I'd be using Sanskrit, and she'd be like, how do you know all this already? And I was like, I don't know, but I do. I would like hear something once and just embody it. And so it resonated so deeply, and I felt so called to help people transform their lives the way that mine had been transformed. So I went to another program pretty soon after that, a couple months after that, that was much more about digesting emotional toxicity.
Mhm.
And that created such a space for me of forgiveness, of acceptance with my dad. And that was such a beautiful healing moment for me, and
Mhm.
such a shift in my relationship with him. And then within a year and a half, I had quit my job in music, and I ended up synchronistically getting a job working there. But that wasn't on the table when I quit. But yeah, it was a pretty incredible pivot.
And what did you do at the Chopra Center? So you ended up loving it so much that you applied, I assume, for a job there.
I
And
didn't. I
but
never applied
they,
for a job.
did they say, "Do you want to work with us?" Or how did that whole thing go down? And like, what did you do for them?
Yeah. So it's one of my favorite, examples of the things that look really impressive on my life resume had nothing to do with me. And I think when you can let go of the mechanics of its creation, you access your ability to manifest things that are far beyond what are realistic, what makes sense, what you can see. So I didn't, and the other part of, I think, manifesting that I talk a lot about and use this as an example of is, it's so much more important to be connected to why you want the thing you want, and not as attached to what it actually looks like. So I didn't want to get a job at the Chopra Center. I wanted to help people transform and heal their lives. That's
Mhm.
what I wanted to do. And so um it happened really, really synchronistically because I was out of the way. I didn't realize I was doing all those very, deep things at the time. I was applying for a job at Lululemon, like no joke. So I certainly didn't know how to get a job working in wellness. I had no experience working in wellness, but I stayed connected to the Chopra Center, and I was at the time I was taking some Ayurvedic herbs, and so I ordered a new re-up of the herbs I was taking, and the Chopra Center sent me the complete wrong order. And I was kind of annoyed. Like, the New Yorker knew I was kind of annoyed, and I wanted my herbs, and like, why are you so bad at this? And like, let's get it together. And I quickly got over that. Thank you, meditation. But I called them to find out what to do with, all these herbs and how to get my shipment and whatever. And the person that I ended up talking to there used to be my contact, my what we call program consultant, the person that helps you navigate the offerings and is really your guide and your personal touch point.
Mhm.
And so we started talking. She remembered me, and obviously, and after a few minutes of getting in touch and getting up to date and current, I said, I really want to work in wellness. I'm really excited to help people transform their lives, and that's like all I knew. And she said, I think you'd be really good for this job that's open here. And I sent her my resume. Another like really important, if I'm bring this into like a teaching moment. I'm like, let's talk about manifesting. It's so important that you pick up the spiritual breadcrumbs. I talk about that all the time. Like, when you get clear on why you want something and you ask the universe for help in co-creating it, you have to pick up the breadcrumbs. So she said, you'd be great at this job. And I said, great. Like, do you want me to send you my resume? How do you want to? I'd love to talk about it. And so I sent her my resume, and 2 days later, I drove down to San Diego and interviewed and was hired on the spot, which like doesn't usually happen there, and had no experience in the job that I was hired for. And 2 days after that, I signed a lease for an apartment, which was a little more expensive than I could afford unless I turned out to be really good at my job. So like, that was a little bit of a leap of faith. And within I guess a few weeks after that, I was like living there and working.
In Carlsbad or
In
where?
Carlsbad, yeah, in
Wow.
Carlsbad, North San Diego County. So my first job at the Chopra Center was a program consultant. So I was the person that would help you navigate all of the Chopra offerings, that would listen to your story and listen to where you need healing and listen to where you wanted to create a shift in your life and say, like, this is what I think you should do, and be there at the event with you, checking
Mhm.
in, and just really creating that relationship with people, holding space really, for their healing journey.
Wow. And then pretty soon, so wait, who interviewed you? Do you remember who was like? Was it
Yeah.
David G? Was it Deepak? Was it David?
No, David G was the person that taught me how to meditate though, in that first week-long program. So that's when I met David G. No, her name was Sarah Harvey. She now is a really amazing business coach, but she, yeah, she interviewed me and was a huge part of my life at the Chopra Center. And so I was a program consultant for about, I think it was 2 years. It was either 2 years or 3 years, but I think it was 2 years. And I did really well in that job. I think innately and naturally, I had a lot of, transferable skills that lent themselves well to that. And it really helped me get over, I think, a lot of things that might have been an issue. Things like there is a business around wellness, things like, we pay for teaching, we pay for practices that will help us heal. And I think a lot of teachers have a hard time receiving money for what they do. And, I was on the back end of this incredible business that had so much integrity around creating experiences for people to heal that people had to pay for, so I think I saw a really nice balance of what that looks like in integrity and authentic way, which I'm really grateful for getting. I also, was insanely lucky to have access to all of the most amazing spiritual teachers on the planet. So, like my first experience as an employee was sitting in on this 3-day program where like Wayne Dyer was the keynote speaker, and just having access to the most amazing teachers from the innermost areas. It was just such a blessing, and I didn't even realize it at the time for a little while. And now I look back and I'm like, oh, I was in a room with Eckhart Tolle talking to him. I mean, it's crazy when I think about how the universe plopped me there.
Wow. I love Wayne Dyer too. I'm obsessed with his audios. Okay. So then at a certain point you were then leading the meditations for Deepak. These huge I've seen pictures of you leading these huge teacher trainings there and all these different things. So you went from one area to then almost like just such a huge position there. Can you talk about that for a sec?
Yeah. So after, I think it was 2 years that I was in that role, I started to feel this deep sense of, I want to be back in LA. I felt very called to be back in LA. I felt very called I became a teacher when I was working there full time, and I felt very called to step into the role of a teacher. And so another like leap of faith, left the Chopra Center and quit. And I didn't have any intention of, I left the door open, but I certainly wasn't attached to, okay, but maybe I can still do this. And maybe you can call me if you need help with this. I said, like, thank you so much. Like, I love you. Thank you for everything you've given me. And I need to go. And I came back to LA and, started like teaching meditation in a really new way, creating clients. I left without any, again, ×2, without any like safety net, without any like actual plan, which I don't always recommend, but it worked out. And really quickly, I always joke, it's kind of like Godfather style. Like really quickly after I left, the Chopra Center, came back into my life and said, we could really use your help. And it was actually before I was teaching there, I was doing event stuff. So I started to help them run their events. So I was like one of the event managers. And then I ended up becoming, one of the people that was running the teacher trainings and like doing that back end. So again, it's so incredible that I had access to how to run an event, how to plan an event, how to plan a schedule, like how to create a flow and an experience. And, again, like cream of the crop education really that I didn't even know that I was asking for. And then that kind of ran its course. And I said, okay, I think I'm done doing event stuff. And then not long after that, they were like, well, you're a great teacher. Like, have you ever thought about maybe we could have you? And so that's when I ended up, and this was, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago now, hosting the events and teaching meditations, and then teaching that led into, teaching full-blown sessions, teaching 90-minute sessions, teaching. So yeah, it's just been such a journey that I think has evolved with me as I've evolved, as a teacher, as a human. And that was a little over 12 years ago, which is just wild. So yeah, I'm so grateful for that.
how did you stumble on Unplug? So at what point in your journey, how did you hear about us? How did you stumble on it?
Yeah, so Unplug came, I don't remember who told me, but somebody told me, oh, there's this studio opening. It was once I had already been back in LA. So I was already back in LA and like teaching a couple places, and I would have a couple clients. I was helping a friend with his business, so I definitely had a side hustle. But somebody said to me, there's a studio that's going to open. You should go by and see if they need teachers. And I felt very, very excited and very like buzzy about that. It was a really good feeling. And I remember, so again, so vividly going by before the studio was open. There was still like plastic kind of on the door that you had to walk through, I think. And yeah, and I, walked in, and I remember meeting you and saying, I teach meditation. Are you looking for teachers? And you said, great, can you lead a meditation right now for me? And I said, yeah, like I could do that. And we went into the studio, and I don't remember what we meditated about or what I did, but yeah, I absolutely remember that day. And then you were like, great, you should teach her. It was like such a,
Check that
again, like
box.
path
He's good.
of least resistance, but truly path of least resistance.
Mhm. And so what do you think Unplug was like in those early days, and what was the feeling around it, and what is it like now for you? Because you're still teaching classes on the app and on, you
Yeah.
did a rock concert for us, and you're on Beachbody On Demand teaching millions of people how to meditate. Like, I'd like to hear about your experience teaching at Unplug.
Yeah, I think it's been really cool to see the studio evolve as the culture has evolved with meditation, with spirituality. I remember being, for a while, I remember being the only teacher that was like using any kind of Sanskrit. And the only Sanskrit that I used were the Bija mantras, so that they didn't mean anything. Like that was like a very big deal. And I'll always be so grateful that you let me use Sanskrit mantras. But I remember really finding my footing as a teacher, with Unplug. Credit, I credit Unplug so often, and then in so many different ways, with helping me like really hone my voice and find my voice as a teacher. And it's in doing the reps, and in the beginning I was teaching at Unplug, like, I don't even know, at one point I was teaching like 5 or 6 times a week. So there were a lot of reps. So in conjunction with like private client, if you average it out, I was at least teaching once a day for the last 10 years, and a big part of that was Unplug. And also, because every class includes a 10-minute talk, a Dharma talk on something different every single time, I really became an expert at finding inspiration and communicating spiritual concepts in a way that were engaging and compelling and hopefully inspiring for people, because you can't say the same thing every time. And so I really found a lot of comfort in the style that I did that, and in how to do that. So I really always credit Unplug with that. And it's been really amazing to see it evolve into what it is now, to see the wide range of teaching styles and teaching personalities and modalities. And like I said, I think it's really evolved beautifully and organically, as you have, and as LA has, and as the collective culture in general around meditation has.
I have to say about you is that what I love about your teaching is you have such a big personality. And that's something that I love about Unplugged teachers. Like, you can't, I always joke around with David G, and I have to credit you too for introducing me to him, that, this is like where the stars come and teach. They start and then they become these huge stars, but you always were these huge stars anyway, to me. But you make it fun, you make it modern, you make it accessible, and you crack me up. And I find that like the things that you say stick in my brain so much
Yeah.
so that, like, even today, I quoted you. I don't even remember how I was quoting you, but I find myself quoting you probably, I don't know, at least 4 or 5 times a week I'm
Oh
quoting
my
you.
gosh, that's so
Um,
flattering.
like spoiler alert, or you saying, this is for you to find your best self. No pressure. But like it cracks me up, and it cracks so many people up. And I think that's what makes Unplug so different, is that it's about the personality.
Yeah.
Anyone could tell you to breathe in, count your breath to 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4.
Mhm.
But it's about the personality, and it's about the connection. I feel like you really connect with people. And because of that, you have such a huge, business on top of our business, where you're seeing private clients all the time and you're teaching them. I remember you saying, I really want to give you your mantra. And you took me to the toilet in the upstairs. Remember that? We were getting private, and we went to the bathroom upstairs in the studio in the loft, and you were like, I'm going to sing this to you. And I was like, no, I'm going to shelf that for now, but I still want that mantra. And you're like, don't worry, when you're ready, you can. And you had this voice where you just showed me for a second. That was shocking. Your voice is like an angel singing.
Oh my
I mean, like,
gosh.
you don't even do anything with that. And it's this crazy, incredible voice. And are you still giving people their mantras and doing things like that? Are you still doing that a lot? And tell me a little bit about that, what you're doing when you're not at Unplug.
Mhm. Yeah, I think yes, I do still see people privately. I do still give people mantras. I haven't been doing as much of that. I've been doing way more coaching lately, um, in conjunction with meditation, but I think people are really needing that right now. More, I find that that's the first and foremost. And then once we've worked together for a little while, then they're like, okay, I think I'm ready to like deepen my practice. And like, what's the mantra and what's that thing? But I think because of what's going on, people are really craving like practical tools and ways that they can use meditation in their life, in an everyday, like all day kind of way. But I do still love giving people their mantras. I'm doing one on Sunday actually. It's such like an honor and privilege to do that. I've been doing a lot of, well, not this year. This year was kind of a wash, but I love speaking at events. I love speaking at retreats. So, I love doing that kind of thing. I'm working on another book right now. So I released Don't Hate Meditate in, gosh, like a year and a half ago now, which is crazy.
That was an amazing book party that we
Oh
had.
my gosh, you've had the best book party for me. I was just looking at pictures of that the other day for something, and it was bringing back so many nice memories. So I definitely want to write another book. I'm really interested in just looking at all the areas that I can share what I do in my voice. So if that's online, that's online. If that's in a virtual class or a studio class, hopefully soon. If that's through a book, if that's at an event, I'm really just looking for opportunities to amplify what I think. I guess maybe that sounds really egotistical now that I'm saying it out loud. I'm looking for opportunities to amplify my voice. No, I want to help. It's the same thing that I've always wanted, which is to help people transform their lives the way mine was transformed by this work, and helping as many people as possible do that.
I love that so much. And your book, Don't Hate Meditate, is fantastic. If you are listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, definitely go out and buy that book. It's just captures your voice so perfectly because you genuinely wrote it.
It's painfully, yeah, I did genuinely write it. Oh my gosh, right?
I love that.
I sure did.
So I'm so happy that you came on here and shared your story. And for those of you who have never meditated with Megan, you have got to try her meditation.
What are you even doing? God.
I know, on the
Hurry
Unplug app,
up.
it's so easy. Download the Unplug meditation app.
It's so easy.
Search teachers, find Megan, and binge her, because you will find your best self.
There are some good ones on there. I really like the ones that we did.
Your titles are so amazing. I want to just kind of look at those for a second, because they're so good, Megan. I mean, hold on. Let me just look at your titles for a second.
Yeah, I loved recording those for the app. I hope people are using them.
We have to do more. Okay. So here are some of yours. Okay. Tap into your intuition, the happy birthday meditation, fast pass to gratitude, shift happens, check yourself before you wreck yourself, be the present, relax and recharge, breakup meditation, hangover meditation, pause before you lose it, your best manifesting abundance, my evening ritual, what's my purpose, me time, morning mantra, evening meditation, my morning ritual, and that's it. But it's pretty amazing and extensive. Isn't that amazing?
I love that, because here's the thing. You don't need to meditate when you're having the best day ever. I mean, yes, you should meditate that day also, but we need meditation to help us when we're not feeling good, when we are going through a breakup, when we have no idea what our intention is or how to set one, when we feel lost, when we're trying to manifest something. That's when you need help, and your meditation practice. So yes, you should all meditate every day, even when you're having a great day, even when you know all the things. But yeah, we
And one
also
of the
got
things
you
I like
when
to quote to you, because that's always fun for me. One quote that you always say is, it doesn't matter what happens in this room and on this, it's what happens out of this room and on this, in your life.
yeah.
And that's really true that, you walk the walk every single day. And I'll give you an example of how big you walk the walk.
Oh no.
And I feel like I know, don't you feel like I know so much about you? You don't realize how much I know about all of you guys, but one of the things that was one of the funniest things you ever showed me was you came into work and you're like, my car just
Oh God.
literally went through the wall.
My car was just driven through a wall. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, right. And then you showed me the picture of your car literally through the wall. And you came to the studio to teach.
Not on my watch, by the way. Like
Yes,
someone else
the
drove my
parking
car through
lot,
the wall, just
the
to be
parking
clear.
lot attendant did it. But you were calm and you were cool and you were collected and you weren't angry. You were just like, this is what happened.
Yeah.
What was so cool about that is that you could really see how meditation works in the fact that you responded in a present and calm manner. Because most people would have been like, have you seen that freaking?
Yeah.
You did not do that. And that's when I was like, oh my God, I want to meditate more so I could be just like Megan.
And as a credit to my practice, that response, and I tell this story still sometimes, the first thought that I had when I saw my car halfway out of wall my first thought was, that's not ideal. Again, very clear memories of certain things. And I remember just looking at it and saying, wow, that's not ideal. And as a credit to my practice, that is not my innate response to the world. That is not my conditioned New Yorker, like judgy AF response to the world. Like that response to the world is a redo and like a reboot based on meditation. So if you are someone that is reactive, that feels very constricted, that feels, like you live in a black and white world and you wish there was a little more gray and a little more grace and ease and responsiveness, know that you too can find that through meditation.
Yes, and
Because
go grab some coconut oil and rub
it on your ailments and talk to your body. Like, we got you. Get some Kool-Aid while you're at it. It's all good.
Look, it sounds weird, but it works. So you know what? As David G says, whatever works. And I'm holding up my three fingers, whatever works.
Yeah.
So remember that, whatever works. And again, Megan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Unplug podcast. I cannot wait to share your story with the world. I loved listening to you and hearing things that I didn't even know, which I love. And you're just such an incredible teacher. I feel so lucky that you're part of the Unplug family. And I think I'm just going to end this podcast and go find my life's purpose.
Go find your best self. I adore you. Thanks for letting me hang out. You're such a light in my life. And I really do often, you can't hear it because you're not always near me, which is unfortunate, but I really do credit unplugging you with so much of my growth and with who I am as a teacher. So endless gratitude to you.
Thank you.